Hello everyone, this is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of Cruel and Beautiful, Eye of the Dragon, and Rabbit Hole. Reading Beastars has been an interesting experience. Right from the get-go, I was sort of enraptured by the world, the setting, the general idea, the characters, the general setup, the character drama. I really like this manga. And now that I'm on volume 11, now that I'm about halfway through the series, there are 22 volumes in all. Now that I'm halfway through it, the problems are starting to become a little bit more prevalent to me. So much so that I really do have to come out and say this. I don't think I like Beastars anymore. There's always been these problems that have been lingering on the back of my mind since I started reading. And early on, I thought they would be corrected, they would be dealt with, they would be improved on. And in some ways, that was true. One of the interesting things about this, I want to say the volumes after 5, I think, is that there was significantly less Haru, significantly less of her thoughting around, and significantly more action, which was something that I wanted out of Beastars. More scenes outside of the academy. More general world building and stuff like that. I think that's what I said very early on, is that I wanted I really liked the idea of what this society could be, but I really like the idea of these herbivores and carnivores living together, and all the potential drama that could arise from that. And early on, I felt that was handled sublimely, supremely well. They're just all these really good, really interesting character moments that all really mesh together and keep giving you all these really good, interesting twists and turns. But after a certain point, I'm not quite sure when. I want to say volume 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 especially. I think 11 was the point of no return for me. I just finished it, actually. Gave it 2 stars on Amazon. After a certain point, you kind of realize that none of it is really building up to anything. Characters will say and do things to try and get a rise out of you, try to just have a twist, right? They'll go through this. The author will have all these incredible bonding moments with Louis joining the Shishibagumi, a group of lions, having them become their boss, having them do these crime things, and they do nothing for I want to say 5 volumes, and then at the end oh, Louis just leaves. Nothing comes of it. Nothing comes of it. You don't get any interesting interactions with other games. You don't get any insider information on how the black market works. You get a couple of tidbits. You get a little bit of an idea of how life works there. But after a while, it starts to feel very hollow. It starts to feel very shallow. It starts to feel like the author really has no idea how to expand the story past the general, most basic concept of just being in this world of animals. Early on, I kept thinking that oh, it's going to build to something, it's going to amount to something. You have these situations Jack, a Labrador, a dog, talking about how he's a genetic freak show, specifically bred to curb in an attempt to curb carnivorous aggression, right? Really interesting stuff. You have Legoshi for 11 volumes, struggling to eat meat. This I think is the main reason I can't fucking stand volume 11 in particular. Is just volume 11 is the moment where the issue with the Thames murderer is finally brought to justice, and it's this is the conflict that kicked off the story. This is the thing that got me interested in Beastars. This is what got me interested this is what we would be waiting to see for a long, long time. But the murderer isn't interesting. He doesn't have like a good design. Like he doesn't have interesting motivations. He's not an interesting antagonist. His reasoning for like how he handles like Tem's murder is kind of iffy, right? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Fucking Bill, I think, made a lot more sense as an antagonist because like he's just a carnivore who embraces the fact that he's a carnivore. This guy just kind of like, I don't know. He's like a fucking oh man, I'm so lonely, I just need to have friends, the only way I can truly be friends with someone is to fucking eat them. It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit into the world very much. And like the entire build up to the conflict was lame, the conflict itself was lame, and the resolution was especially lame. Like, and the aftermath. Like, I've never seen a core conflict in a manga leave such little impact on me. Like, there are just so many things that I just do not care about when it comes to this major story arc. And now, Volume 12, I just started reading it out of morbid curiosity. We're back to like, oh no, can a relationship with Haru work? No. Like, that's my thing about Beastars. Like, this is another thing about it, is that Beastars doesn't seem to want to admit that this interspecies, like, world they created is dysfunctional as shit and wouldn't actually work. Like, Beastars does not want to admit that carnivores and herbivores cannot coexist. They don't want to admit that isn't a practical thing. Like, it doesn't fucking work. Instead of addressing that, like, what you're seeing, like, is the aftermath of, like, of what happens when you integrate, like, several groups of people who are in no way compatible or can get along in any way, shape, or form. Like, instead of acknowledging the real problems of fucking Beastars, they're just, oh no, it's perfectly fine. Like, you can suppress your urges forever. Like, you can just ignore the fact that you're craving herbivore flesh. Yeah, it's a good thing that you want to pursue a relationship with a fucking rabbit. No, it's not! Like, no, it isn't. There is nothing about this is resolving itself in any meaningful way. And I think that's the big problem with Beastars as a whole, is that, like, it kept introducing new conflicts, new like character drama, new like elements to the story without really resolving much of anything when it comes to like its core general concept of like how a society of animal people comprised of herbivores and carnivores could coexist. Like, I don't believe it would work. Like, it doesn't work. Like, as you see in the fucking manga, like it's ridiculous. And I don't even there's just so much, like, there's so many minor instances like that I could bring up, like the whole like Louis' role on the plot, and just like how many other characters have been shafted. Like I haven't seen Juno in fucking forever, and she was one of my favorite characters. I'm sure they'll ruin her. Like, here's another thing I noticed. When was the last time we even talked about, like, the concept of becoming the Beastar, like the ruler of all beasts, or whatever, the Valiant Beastar, I should say. It's a concept that kind of feels like once they introduced it, like oh yeah, like each school picks out a Beastar, and then like the best Beastar out of those bunch like become like the king of the ruler of all beasts, basically. Like, it's sort of a meritocratic sort of civilization they have here, kind of completely dropped. I think in volume, I think like what they set up was that like the whoever found Tem's murderer would be like elected Beastar. So I guess that means a negotiate, but it says how little I care about what's happening, that it's not even like something I was actively thinking about when it happened. Like, it was kind of obvious that Legoshi would be Beastar to me. And now it seems to be going that way, unless like they specifically try to like subvert my expectations, which if that would happen, that would go against what they said when they introduced the concept to begin with. So it fundamentally doesn't work. Yes, I've mostly talked about the plot and like the themes and stuff like that, but like well, let's talk about the action sequences, because I think out of any manga I've read, Beastars has one of the most baffling has made one of the most baffling decisions I think I've ever seen, in which it went from like a fairly really well written like character drama, you know, with no real actions to speak of, to being like a wannabe like action series. Like it really wants to pretend like it's a shonen anime or something. Like Legoshi's going around like training with this panda and like talking about like, oh man, if I'm gonna understand Riz, I'm gonna have to beat the shit out of him with my fist because I'm a boy, and that's what boys do in shonen action series. It's just, I'm sorry, I'm a male, and that's what males do in shonen action series. They always refer to characters as like male or female because they're animals. Yeah, like I was never hyped for like the conflict between Riz and fucking Legoshi. Like I never cared about how it was set up. I didn't like how Legoshi handled it. I didn't like Riz's motivations, his abilities. Like, oh man, like he's a bear, but he's not taking his shrink suppressant medicine. Oh no, like it's boring, right? The only thing I think I liked about it was like sometimes like when the fucking bear like started attacking Legoshi, it looked badass as fuck. Like the artwork is pretty consistently good, I think, for the most part. Yeah, I think in recent volumes it's become less sexualized too, so that's also an improvement. But that doesn't, like, I'd rather have the sexualization and a good story than like a bad one with like no sexualization. Like, I feel like in recent volumes it really lost its edge, honestly. Well, I don't want to say lost its edge. Like it lost the plot, I should say. Like it's just not all that interesting. Like what's happening? Like it's like. It's like the author realized that, like, oh wait, I need to resolve this whole Tem thing. Let's take a couple of volumes, get that out of the way, and then go right back to Legoshi lusting after this fucking rabbit. It just, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't care about that. Like I just. What missed potential? What a waste of potential. I haven't been this disappointed, I think, in a series ever, honestly. I can't think of any manga that like I've been hooked on this much, right? Something that like 11 volumes of this I've read through now, like, and I liked most of them, but the drop in quality was so noticeable that I just had to make a video on it. Like I just had to like give a general analysis of just like where it all went wrong. And there's a lot of stuff I haven't talked about, right? Like I haven't talked about like, you know, some of the weirder character moments. Again, I didn't bring up what happens to Louis in that fight between Riz and like fucking Legoshi. Like what's the point? Like it was stupid. Like everything about that was stupid. Like the setup with the Biki was dumb. Like I just. Like, Louis joining the Ishibagumi didn't make much sense to begin with, but, like, leaving it made even less sense. Like, it was... And then, like, what he does afterward is just... It's dumb. And, like, the aftermath... Oh, yeah, you technically committed a crime, but it's not a big deal. You ate a fucking herbivore, but it's okay because he gave his consent. So it was, like, consensual consumption. I don't know what the fuck Beastars would... How Beastars would classify this, but I have difficulty believing it would play out like this in real life. I'm sorry, but like everything about this was just really dumb, really poorly handled, and just overall just a huge disappointment. They really could have done a lot better.